Okay, we are live, but we got to let it breathe just for a moment here while we bring on Facebook. And then we're going to get this party started proper. Can't wait. I've missed you guys. Have you missed us? I'm sure you have. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, my fellow football priest, who you know, who you love, Zack Kelberman. Zack, is it just due diligence? How do you explain, or what do you make of the Denver Broncos being in attendance at, say, Caleb Williams pro day, etc.?
You have to prepare for every possibility. That's what a good GM does. And if you want to call that due diligence, then I would agree. There's really no chance that Caleb falls to 12, but there is a remote 0.1% possibility, Chad. The Broncos move up to 1 or 2 if he falls and they land Caleb Williams. I think they wanted to see, all the quarterbacks up close and kind of get a general consensus of this draft class.
Yes, indeed. It won't stop there. It won't stop there. Um, Broncos, dude, they've something's still telling me, like, back of my mind, like Sean Payton's not done on like maneuvering here. We'll see. There's a lot of runway left, as they say. And Scott brings up a good point too. When you talk about being at a USC Pro Day, they've got 4 guys that are projected to be top 100 picks. But they're also looking at tackles. At Notre Dame, watching Joe Alt do his thing. Zach, I mean, in a perfect world, the Broncos have a franchise quarterback named Russell Wilson that's winning ball games, and this 12th overall pick or first round pick, wherever it may have ended up, is used on an offensive tackle or an edge rusher. But you can't put the cart before the horse when you don't have a quarterback.
Exactly. The Broncos have holes everywhere. The Garrett Bowles situation's up in the air. We don't really know what they're going to do with him, trade, cut, restructure, or leave alone. Zach Strief, the Broncos OL coach, was working out hands-on with Joe Alt, the top-rated tackle, or one of them in this draft class. Maybe he's the pick at 12 and the Broncos trade up into the second for Bo Nix. There's a bunch of different avenues the Broncos can go, Chad, but you can throw a dart on a need board and hit a need for the Broncos.
So, Zach, real quick, a quick segue. But first, some hellos to everybody. David, what's up, bro? Kevin, yeah, we're running late. We've had some, if you guys saw our tweet today, we haven't really been able to publish articles today because there's a big back end thing happening on our network engineering wise, where they're upgrading and changing some stuff. We'll be back online tomorrow, publishing and whatnot. But it's been a lot of behind the scenes weird stuff going on today. Weird in the sense that it's atypical. So appreciate you guys bearing with us. But shout out to all you early birds been waiting in the chat. Colin, appreciate you guys. William, Zach, what do you make of this story? Russell Wilson, who just a couple years ago, right, buys a home in Cherry Hills, $25 million, a record-setting purchase, had to sell it, or chose, I guess, to sell it at a loss. Sold it recently, $21.5 million, according to Property Records. I'm reading this from Mike Kliss of 9 News. So he took a $3.5 million bath, Zach. But I guess maybe you can afford to do that when you're getting paid $38 million by the Broncos to play for the Steelers.
Another loss for Russell Wilson in Denver, Chad. What else is new? And interesting about that house, it has more bathrooms, 12, than Russell Wilson had victories, 11, with the Broncos. That's a real, true fact.
Oh, man. Poetic, emblematic. What a metaphor that is, golly.
I'd want to sell that place too if I was him.
Yeah, that's true, man. Mike, what's up? The Ronk checking in early with some stars and a message. Good evening, right back at you. Hope you're doing well, big dog. We got the Triple C, Colby C. Collier on Facebook. Good to see you, big dog. Hello, right back at you. Tonight's kind of a different night for us. Weird stuff going on, like I said. We haven't been able to publish and write because of that stuff, so it's kind of like, I don't know, I feel somewhat disconnected, but we ended up having to start late, guys. Troy, love you, big dog. Thank you jumping in. One of our Mount Rushmore superstars with the super chat saying just supporting. Thank you, big dog. Means a lot to us. But we got a late start. We'll probably keep it relatively tight. So I only tell you guys that if there's burning topics, questions, supers, get them in early. Pardon me, and we'll make sure to get to them. Okay, Troy, love you, big dog. Zach, I want to shift gears here, and the guys last night on Mile High Insiders got a chance to talk about this because it was obviously news of the day. But the Broncos brought back Justin Strnad, the linebacker. You had the story on that for us, and there was some unique context to how that kind of unfolded. And then I want to talk about the offensive tackle that was signed yesterday. But tell everybody about Strnad coming back.
Yeah, if you guys remember the little mini drama that unfolded with Will Lutz, where he had an agreement with the Jaguars and then backed out of that at the 11th hour to re-up with the Broncos, same thing happened with Strnad. A report came in that he agreed to the Carolina Panthers or with the Carolina Panthers to reunite with Ajiro Evero and join Josie Jewell. And then it was reported that he had a change of heart, changed his mind, whatever, and decided to re-sign with the Broncos, Chad, on a 1-year deal. I imagine it can't be anything more than the veteran minimum, and he's going to be a strict backup in the inside linebacking core, but a core special teamer. That's the good thing about Strnad is he's great on the third side of the ball.
This is true. He had some promise initially, man, but then, former 5th-round pick. I remember when the Broncos drafted him, Wake Forest, all our draft guys, Nick, Eric, they're like, yeah, kind of smallish for a inside linebacker. But there's some pros to that. Probably like a 3rd round, late day 2 guy that the Broncos got in the 5th round because of some injury concerns. Then he comes in and wasn't it a wrist? It was a wrist injury that cost him his entire rookie year. And then really, he wasn't able to find his footing. They gave him an opportunity to be the guy next to Josie. And he just couldn't seize it, man. Like, I don't know what it was. I think a big part of it is like he has a hard time sifting through the muss, getting off blocks, stuff like that. But he's smart. He's athletic. So it's good to have him back. Good glue guy, like you said, too, for third phase.
Yeah, we saw a handful of him starting in 2021, and then we haven't seen any of that since. So make of that what you will. You always need those depth players to fill out the depth chart, the roster, and also guys to have on special teams. It's so important to Sean Payton, Chad, that you pull double duty.
Bugmeister, don't even trip, bro. We're just happy to have you. That's the most that we can ask, So don't even trip. Happy to have you in the conversation tonight. David Kilgore, the rocking 77, rocking K77. I end up memorizing everybody's Twitter handles, Zach, our bona fide super chat superstars, because I'm tagging everybody after the show as shout outs. So I remember these things. But David, we love you, big dog. Hope you're doing well. Thank you. He says, what's the Vikings trading up with the Texans? Are we now out of the JJ McCarthy sweepstakes? Zach.
Well, what's up with it is that they want to move up for a quarterback more than likely, David, but we don't know. I mean, there's rumors and speculation, sure. We don't know for certain. Only the Vikings do whether they want to move up for McCarthy. I've heard that they can move up for Drake May. I mean, we just don't know at this point, but they have more ammo for sure. They have as much intention, if not more. They're as desperate as the Broncos are to get their young rookie quarterback. We also don't know, David, I made this point before, whether JJ is the apple of Sean Payton's eye. We're just assuming all of that because of that one report, Chad, that said he was enamored with him. For all we know, he could be enamored with Bo Nix or Drake May or, dare I say, Michael Penix. So we'll see how it shakes out, David.
Sean Payton's also one of the best there is at feeding the media BS to go, down this path when he's going left. And like, he's really good at the kind of football espionage thing. And I think it stems from his time. He's a Bill Parcells acolyte. Parcells was that way. Who was also a Parcells acolyte? Bill Belichick. We also know that Sean Payton was a longtime admirer and studier of the New England Patriots under Bill Belichick. And I don't think anybody did football espionage better and took it more seriously than Belichick's Patriots for all those years. So, I don't always believe when a report leaks and it's a rumor that Sean Payton thinks X. I don't care if it's in the middle of a season and this is how Sean Payton feels about, the opposing team's middle linebacker, or a draft rumor like this. I'm not saying it's not true, but don't take it at face value.
That's why mock drafts are so insignificant, even up until the week of the draft, because no one knows. Everyone's guessing. And you're right. Sean Payton kind of puts that disinformation out there. It's exciting in a way that we get to guess for the next month who his target is. It's also really frustrating not having more clarity and having to wait that month to find out our answer.
But, back to this topic for David, it's important to remember as well when it comes to the Vikings, they're still ahead of the Broncos either way. So, we'll see how it shakes out. That's the unfortunate one of the unfortunate effects of trading all the stuff that was traded to get Russ, and then even the trades to acquire Sean Payton's rights, is you don't have as much capital to move up and reckon and compete with a team like the Vikings that's obviously maneuvering. For the Broncos, Zach, to really kind of match potential offers like that the Vikings are going to be putting out there. If it comes to a trade up, they have to put picks and personnel. And when it comes to personnel being on the table, we all know that it really, the only guy that's going to probably help lube a deal, whatever, PS2. And do you really want to get rid of your shutdown corner?
It's why we don't know. We have George Fox hopping in saying, "Great pod, guys. I'm getting the feeling that we might have a better season than we think. Denver Broncos for life." Keith Brugman hopping in. Good to see you, Keith. Chad and Zach, please give me a handful of players you think will benefit most from being in Peyton's system for a second year. It's a really good question. I immediately, because he's an offensive guy. I'll go first, Chad, real quickly. I'll serve it back to you.
Of course.
I First of all, Javonte Williams, another year removed from the knee injury, because running backs are so valuable in the Peyton scheme. I think he could benefit from being a little healthier. And also if they keep Courtland Sutton, because what has Sean Payton's history told us? I have one more after this too, is that he likes big body possession receivers. Michael Thomas, Marcus Colston. That was his thing in New Orleans. My third one, if he can ever stay healthy, God forbid, would be Greg Dulcich, because we heard, Chad, they wanted to make him the Joker in the offense, move him around. That could be Brock Bowers' future in 2024. But Dulcich, if he stays on the field and he has, less competition, or maybe just Troutman for competition, I think he could surprise.
I don't disagree with any of that. It's kind of a unique situation because it's year 2, Zach, of the Sean Payton offense and system and all that. So you're not talking about having to worry about changing nomenclature or, concepts on a base level. That's all installed. But we also know that the offense we saw, Duchess, what's up? Michaela, love you. Good to see you tonight. The offense we saw last year, Zach, was a severely pared down, not only pared down version of the Peyton scheme, but huge, great, massive emphasis on run game. It looked almost nothing like what you picture in your mind's eye when you think back to the great Peyton and Breeze offenses all those years in New Orleans. And that's a long-winded way of saying that because it's probably going to look different. It might not. You might end up going real run heavy again, Zach, in 2024 if it's a rookie quarterback, to insulate your quarterback. We'll see. But it does maybe make it a little bit harder to project, hey, who's going to benefit most from being in year 2 of the Peyton scheme, because it's hard to know exactly what it's going to look like, which is weird because we're talking about a guy, Zach, that had nearly 2 decades worth of sample size with which to project in New Orleans, but it's just kind of been a unique situation.
Unfortunately, I couldn't give quarterback as my answer there. So maybe this time next year, we'll be talking about the quarterback. But one more is Marvin Mims. He's going to benefit by default by getting the reps that would have went to Jeudy, and Sean Payton wants to see him develop more as a wide receiver. I think he will, and I think he'll prove his draft pedigree correct.
By the way, in case you guys missed it, we haven't been able to talk with you since Monday night. The Browns, Zach, showing Jerry Jeudy the Lizzo, right? He's getting the love. He's getting the dollar bills. Break it down, dude. For people who may have missed the story, Jerry Jeudy getting paid by the Browns.
I don't want to give the wrong number, so I'm going to pull up the contract really quickly. Up to $58 million for a 3-year deal. That averages out to over $19 million annually. But here's where I just laughed my you-know-what off. $41 million fully guaranteed at signing for a player with 11 career touchdowns, no Pro Bowls, no 1,000-yard seasons. By guaranteed money, Chad, he's tied for 5th in the entire NFL now.
Wild.
Good luck, Cleveland. You're going to need it.
Look, you're paying him. It's on a smaller scale, but it's similar to what the Broncos did with Russ. You're showing him the money before he even takes a snap. Man, I would want him to get out there and feel like he's got to sing for a supper. And then, even if I wanted to give him this contract, I'm thinking, okay, let's make sure that he's as motivated as he maybe needs to be starting over in a new city.
They definitely are paying for potential and not production. You brought up Russ, but the Broncos also did this with somebody else that lives in infamy in Broncos lore. That would be Mr. Whoopee Cushion, Juwan James. The Broncos gave him $54 million, which at the time was top of the market value for a right tackle that did nothing to deserve that up until that point. The Broncos were banking on him getting better, and we all saw how that went down.
Oh, man. I'm laughing because I just saw a comment from Todd Ostendorf at 6:39 in the timestamp in the chat. Check it out, Zach. You'll get a chuckle out of it. Dave from Georgia, my dog. Look, we're twinners today. Check it out. Dave and I. That's right. Brothers from another mothers. Good to see you, bro. Legendary, mythical, super chat superstar at MHH. It's been a minute. I hope you're doing well. He says, howdy, Broncos country. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. Been a while since I've been able to give to the cause. All good, bro. And just wanted to show some love. Hashtag Broncos country. Thanks for helping a displaced fan feel in the loop.
Thank you,
Hey,
Dave.
bro, I don't want you to think, Dave, that if it's a day you can't throw down a super chat, that you can't be involved in the conversation. We want you here. I hope you know that. Hope you feel that. So don't ever think otherwise, my friend. And thank you so much. It's good to have you. Good to see you, big dog.
Yeah, good to see you, Dave. Hopefully you could stick around in the future for the upcoming podcast, because as we get closer to the draft, it's going to get more fun and more intense. Good to see you, though. Appreciate you as always. And Michaela. Wow.
The Duchess from the top rope here, as she is wont to do. We love you.
Thank
Also,
you,
check your DMs, Michaela. I just sent you a message. Thank you. Seriously. She says, heard a report of all the teams ranking per position and overall. Broncos were ranked 31st. I heard they aren't even a favorite to win against Carolina. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, this was a big topic. It was the main topic of the Broncos for Breakfast show this morning with Nick and Scott. Zach, what do you make of it? I have my thoughts, but what do you make of it for the Duchess?
Well, I know Michaela is loving this because she's in that kind of doomsday camp with Denver, but this is also one person's opinion. I know Mike Clay is pretty revered. I'm pretty sure that was Mike Clay who did the rankings. He's revered. He's good at what he does, but it's still just his opinion and his data breakdown, and it doesn't really mean much, Chad, to me in the grand scheme of what the Broncos are going to do in 2024. The roster from last season is going to look much different, hopefully, than what we saw.
I don't blame him. I mean, I could maybe pick nits in the ranking and whatnot, but I don't blame a national guy, as respected as Mike Clay is. I don't blame a national guy, Zach, for looking at the Broncos roster as currently constituted and going, I'm not too impressed. You're missing the key, most important, critical, crucial piece in a quarterback. And not only that, Zach, but you're lacking depth on the O-line. You don't have a Batman edge rusher. You got questions in the secondary. You got questions at wide receiver because, hey, everyone's excited about Marvin Mims, the returner. But, I mean, Broncos fans are excited about him, the receiver. Don't get me wrong. This cat in the first quarter of the season, Zach, if Sean Payton would have not gone away from him for whatever reason, when he was involved in the offense, my dude in the first quarter was on pace for 1,000-yard season. And let me remind everybody, Cortland Sutton's big, prolific kind of return to prominence this year, the 10 touchdowns, impressive, lots of huge, big plays. He still only managed a little over 700 yards receiving. And Mims, Zach, was on pace to bust well over 1,000 until he fumbled twice against the Jets, once on a handoff reverse thingamajigger from, what's his name, P. Ryan, right, on the reverse. And then the muffed kick or punt. Then he went in the doghouse and never really got back into the offense. I don't know why. I'm excited about him, but to the point of Mike Clay looking at it from 10,000 feet, there are a lot of questions, and especially, Zach, when you're missing the quarterback, it's understandable why someone like Mike Clay would be unimpressed with the Broncos roster relative to the other 31 teams.
Yeah, you're right. And when I said, it's one person's opinion, I wasn't saying that he's wrong. I guess what I was trying to say was like, it's not that surprising. If you would have
Yeah.
told me the Broncos have one of the worst rosters after watching last season and breaking it down as I've done on Twitter, position by position, we all know that. It's like if you would tell me we think the Broncos are going to be bad next season. You give me a record prediction, 5-12. I'd say, okay, I believe it. I expect that for the first time in 8 years. So I just think maybe the ranking to me anyway wasn't that of a breaking story.
No, but for fans that are already, feeling a little down and out about things and apprehensive about which way this thing's going, it was a little bit of a barb, and I understand that. But just keep in mind, we're sitting here the 21st of March. A lot is still going to change relative to this team's roster between now and training camp. I mean, the draft, obviously, but, they'll make additional signings. Everything, Zach, becomes possible when you have a franchise quarterback. And it's almost, it's the opposite of that. When you don't have one, it feels like nothing is possible, right? Like you're just living in the doldrums. And that's how the Broncos are viewed right now. It's the literally early beginning stages of a complete rebuild. Sean Payton has to kind of make believers out of people, and it starts with figuring out what you're going to do at quarterback. Nobody is excited, literally. Besides the Stidham family, nobody is excited about the prospect, Zach, of Jarrett Stidham opening this season or even potentially being QB1. Don't let Adam Troutman, when he resigned and what he had to say fool you. Nobody, including in that locker room, is super stoked at the prospect of him being the quarterback. Sean Payton's not a fool. He knows he's got to solve that ASAP. That's what this whole, that's what the first round of the draft anyway for Denver is going to be all about.
I also look at it like the context of when this stuff came out. This is all pre-draft filler to get you by. I mean, whose roster is really set before the draft? So many teams use the draft as their basis for foundation to build their team. So let's see these rankings after the draft, and maybe the Broncos shoot up a little bit.
Indeed. Okay. Love you, Michaela. We got Jesse Galvin jumping in on Super Chat. Thank you, Jesse. Jeudy and his number 10 is gone. Nix is number 10. So the number 10, Zach, the jersey number being available for the Broncos. Bo Nix wearing number 10. Yeah, I mean, again, it might be that they don't move. They hang tight. They take Bo Nix at number 10. And I wouldn't hate it. Honestly, I wouldn't hate it, especially, Zach, if the other four are gone. I think he's pretty clear 5. And relative to fit, there is an argument. I'm not necessarily asserting this, but as I talked about the other night, there is an argument to be made that, he maybe could be ranked higher as far as fit is concerned for the Broncos in the quarterback class.
As long as he's not wearing number 3, I'm okay. And fortunately, Will Lutz has taken that number from Russell Wilson and Drew Lock before him. So if it's Nix, it's Nix. We got Rock Chalk hopping in, $10 super. So good to see you, Rock Chalk. Thank you. Great Twitter follow, by the way, for anyone who wants to pick up another Broncos fan on X. Might be a bit of a hot take, but I think the Broncos should pick a running back day 3. Javonte coming back fast from his injury was admirable, but he didn't look good. He needed an insurance policy if he doesn't improve. I mean, technically, the insurance policy would be Samaje Perine, who's like a mini Javonte with better hands. But I do agree they shouldn't, and I'm glad they didn't waste any money in free agency on a running back, but they definitely should pick up a guy in the 6th round or as an undrafted free agent. I'd like Jaleel McLaughlin, Chad, but you need one more body in there because I'm with Rock Chalk because I'm a huge Javonte fan, as are you. We just don't know if he'll ever be the same running back coming back from that knee injury.
Yeah. He was never the most twitchy, explosive back. He was all about just that grind and the power and just utter refusal to go down on first contact, questionable vision at times. Then he suffers that multi-ligament knee injury. And, you wonder, well, what's he going to look like? We got a glimpse of that last season, but it's hard to, for me anyway, Zach, read too far into Javonte 2023 because he did come back very quick. And it's not that he was rushed back. I mean, he's just freak of nature, the way his body healed up so fast. He was good to go, but there's so much, not only from the physical aspect of the body healing and getting back to where it was, back to homeostasis, but like mentally trusting your knee, like having the confidence in it, not even front of brain stuff, but like how you're feeling subconsciously when you take that hand off, Zach, and you have to like make your read, make your cut, lean into contact, whatever, like all these little things that could compromise how you approach those things on a subconscious level relative to, is my knee going to blow out on me? So this isn't exactly the same topic as what was brought up by Keith earlier, but he's one of the guys that I would say I look forward to very much as a possibility, as a breakout guy in Peyton's scheme year 2. But I'm with Rock Chalk. You do got to hedge a little bit and add at least one more viable, just a more explosive guy that's got a little bit more Zach meat on his bones than Jalil. I dig Jalil. I think there's a future for him as a potential star in Denver if you get the right quarterback. If you get the right quarterback in Denver, he could end up being a star. But I want somebody that's kind of got maybe the Javonte size, but more explosion and better vision.
I was going to say he needs his Alvin Kamara, which is a physical runner, but also a guy with breakaway speed, can catch the ball, run the ball, pass protect a little bit. I'm looking it up, and the Broncos would save. They would net 1.5 mil by releasing Samaje Perine. So maybe if they find someone in the draft chat in the later rounds, they can replace him. But I do agree with you that Javonte should look a little better in year 2, though there's always that non-zero chance that we've already seen the best of Pookie Williams.
I'll tell you though, I went and spent some time over the last month or so just watching film on some of the games last year, and Perine, he earned his bones in the fourth quarter of games. Like all of a sudden, we're giving it to him, we're tossing it to him, and opponents just were kind of lulled into Javonte, Jalil, and then all of a sudden this tall dude starts. That was great to see, but I slept on how good of a pass protector he was, man. Yeah. I could think of just off the top of my head 3 or 4 big observations. I'm watching dropbacks where he picks up a blitzer and saves Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson still runs off when he doesn't need to, breaks the pocket and bails, even though his running back just saved him. But it's not just picked up the blitz, saw it, took care of it, but like saw it, took care of it, put said blitzer on rear end. Like he's got some value to him. And at his cost, it's like, hey, I wouldn't mind hanging on to him.
If they want to, I'm down for it as well. We got the one and only Biggie Bronco.
Biggie. In a minute, dude. I'm glad to see you're finally able to comment and chat. Good to see you, bro.
I thought that name rung a bell. Good to see you. Thank you for hopping in. He goes, am I missing something? Didn't Sean Payton get the same production out of Jarrett Stidham last year in the 2 games as he did Russell Wilson? I mean, they went 1-1 with Stidham under center. What was he? The TD interception ratio, was it 2-1, Chad?
2-1. 2-1.
2-1, yeah. So it was kind of like Russ, though you lost a little bit of the downfield moonball type of plays, but you were a little more consistent from down to down, middle of the field. You didn't have to worry about taking unnecessary sacks, committing turnovers. It was a more stable operation with Stidham under center, but you lose a little bit of those wild backyard plays that Russ provided.
That's the thing, is just like in all things in life, there are trade-offs, right? So you get a quarterback who the O-line can count on where he's going to be at a given moment. Ball's coming out on time. This offense is staying on schedule, but you are totally neutered of any kind of explosive threat or even explosive component. Because not only, Zach, is it not in Jarrett Stidham's nature to be aggressive and go vertical, but he just doesn't have that same. I mean, first of all, Russ, there's a lot that you can criticize about the dude, but still at age 35, one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL and arguably of all time. His accuracy on that level is pretty uncanny. And finally, this last season, Zach, the Broncos were able to actually capitalize on that. But Jarrett Stidham, that's the trade-off. You lose some of the explosion. Things are going to stay on schedule. So to win with a guy like that, your offensive line needs to stay solid. You got to be able to run the ball productively. You got to keep it like, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, that type of situation, or else he's easy you smother him. He's not going to test you beyond the chains. It's a little too easy to box him up.
I also don't think it's a fair comparison because when Stidham started, it was the final 2 games of the season. When the team benched Russell Wilson, they knew the playoffs were a long shot. It was kind of demoralizing, Chad. They had nothing really to play for. When Russ was starting, they were in playoff contention or, hanging around. They went on that big midseason 5-game, 6-game winning streak, whatever it was. So it's not a fair sample size from a one-to-one perspective, but I think you saw more of what Sean Payton wants consistently in Jarrett Stidham.
Exactly. But if you take a guy like that, Zach, who keeps you on schedule, doesn't turn it over, doesn't take sacks, and then add the playmaker component, you add that threat, a quarterback in an offense teaming with the threat of explosion at any given moment, then you actually have something special. Yeah. So you got to find a quarterback like that. And then you go, well, but wait a minute, would Bo Nix fit that kind of mold? And there's a lot of reason to doubt, whether or not he would have the juice, as it were, to be a big play quarterback. I could see him operating the scheme very similar to in terms of competency as like a Drew Brees, etc. But even Drew Brees, man, he had that big brain, but he was able to prepare, pre-diagnose, and when the opportunities, Zach, were there for the big plays, he was never. Not only would he not miss them, but he was unafraid to take the chance. I don't know if Bo Nix is that guy. I'm not saying that he isn't. I'm saying I don't know that he is.
Mike Edel, $10 super. Good to see you, Mike, as we do each and every podcast. You have become a truly foundational member, and we're appreciative for each and every contribution. Hey, Chad, Zach, and Scott, hopefully they have a clause in his contract minus $50K per drop. I assume you mean Jerry Jeudy. The Denver on Cleveland curse will continue. Bye, Jerry. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, again, this is like with Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, that's their problem now. It's the Browns' problem. Deshaun Watson, Jerry Jeudy, and Jameis Winston, who signed on as the backup. That's quite the trio there in Cleveland. But I do wish Jeudy well because he does have talent, Chad. There's between the ears issues, attitude issues, very immature. But from a physical talent standpoint, you could see why he was a first-round pick.
Yeah, and not to make excuses for him, but similar to any wide receiver that has been a Bronco since 2015, it's hard to make hay when you're in a quarterback dependent position, and it's hard to reach your full potential when it's a constant carousel and the quarterbacks that are under center are just one wounded animal version of or another, right? Or just disjointed in one form. So I hope that he goes and sees some success, or at least is given the opportunity through quarterback consistency to have some success. Then we'll know, whether he was really a first round caliber guy. I think he will. And I think he was. I think he just came to one of the worst possible places he could have come for his style of, the way he wins, right? Is that route runner guy. That's how he creates separation. And the Broncos just during his time here never had a quarterback that could really play with anticipation.
Well, for once he has, I mean, I guess not for once, but he has great offensive coaching now who should be able to scheme him open in Kevin Stefanski playing next to Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Nick Chubb if he comes back from his injury. I mean, they have solid pieces in Cleveland, and I think they're banking, Chad, on Jeudy being the cherry on top. That's why I said good luck.
We shall see. Looks like we've got here jumping in Eric Holt. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you. Appreciate the super tonight. Hey, Chad and Zach, I've been saying we need players. Watch the tape of OLB Troy University's Javon Solomon. This kid could be our Batman. Hashtag Go Broncos. Yeah, what do you think? What do you think, Skinnity? Tell us what you think of Solomon. I'll spend more time on this cat, but what's that? Show me again. Yeah, Scott's going like this. Hey, not to always defer to someone else on draft, but some of this stuff, like we Scott says I wasn't overly impressed at the Senior Bowl on Solomon, but guys like Zach and I, we have to stay so locked in on covering the news every single day. We don't have as much time to spend. Like when I first started doing this, Zach, oh man, because I love this time of year. I love the draft. I love free agency, all that stuff. I would spend easily half my time on draft and, doing film breakdowns and scouting reports and all that stuff. But as I kind of moved up through the biz and ended up having to become more of a not just a writer, but an editor and like publisher side of things, where you're not only managing people, but news, because when you're a publication, especially in the digital age, Zach, news gets everybody through the door, but it's your analysis and what you have from an analysis perspective as a publication that keeps them there, keeps them coming back. So that's Zach and I. Our job is to get you guys through the door, reading the articles, when you first discover Mile High Huddle. And we have great writers like Nick and Eric and Carl and Lance and Bob and Tom and Luke and everybody else that helps keep you around.
I'll say this though, Eric, and from a kind of a macro point of view, if the Broncos are going to go edge, I prefer they go in the first round if they don't go quarterback. I want a blue chipper at edge. They have enough Robins. They need a Batman, and maybe Solomon could be that Batman, like you're saying there, but I want someone that's no doubt the alpha, the top dog as a edge rusher opposite Baron Browning.
Okay, guys, we are at 35 minutes. Like I said, we got a late start tonight, so we got to probably keep it a relatively short broadcast this evening. So let me move on here to James. Good to see you, James. How you doing, big dog? Very generous super chat. We love you. We appreciate you. He says, "Hey, brothers, can we just be happy making ESPN regret their assessment of our roster and take the best player on our board? Okay with moving up or down, just take the best. There are great bargains at 12. Want ESPN, want them to eat it, want ESPN to eat their words." Yeah. It's I always feel like I'm a party pooper a little bit, Zach, or the guy I'm not just trying to be devil's advocate or argue, but best player available almost always is within it's within kind of the view of best player available at the positions that matter to us, that we need. If you have, in other words, if that best player, it's probably still a quarterback. They need to get a quarterback. Like, they're dead in the water. But I feel you, James. I understand. You could take, for example, think of it like this, James. That's a fine line to walk, all right? Because I don't envy the decisions these coaches and GMs and whatnot have to make, but it's a fine line to walk, because what if Von Miller was there at 12, that caliber of edge, right? But instead you take a quarterback or whatever, and you feel like you may have reached, maybe you don't know yet. You got to let time play out, but you can't really question it too hard, only because how far does the Von Miller move the needle for you if you don't have a quarterback? Well, we already know the answer to that. We lived through that from 2016 through whatever it was, 2021, when Von was traded away. So I'm not the best person to ask and talk about best player, because I just view it a little bit differently. But what's your answer for James?
I understand the sentiment for sure. And regardless of who the Broncos pick, it's going to help their standing, because, again, like I said earlier, good teams build their roster through the draft, their foundation. So that's why it's a little premature to put out these rankings. I will say this, though, James. If I was Sean Payton, George Payton, my impetus, my motivation would not be to prove ESPN wrong or make them eat their words. I'm going about my business, assembling the team and my vision, doing what I think is best for the Broncos organization. And if Mike Clay wants to disagree, he can disagree. If he wants to put out the Broncos in a low ranking, he can do that. But it's not important in the grand scheme of what the Broncos' long-term vision should be.
But I'm with you, James. We're moving away from putting the number 3 in this statement, but let them hate, and then make them pay. We're definitely taking the 3s out of our hashtag let them hate, Zach. But
they're still Lutz. We never know.
That's true. But anyway, thank you, James. Good to see you, big dog. Okay, we got Big E jumping in again. Thank you, bro. Returning with gusto. Appreciate you. He says, "Okay, I'm okay with everything you guys just said. I don't think it's Bo Nix. I think it's a kid they can get in the 3rd round named Spencer Rattler. Can do everything that you just said. Maybe, like we talked about earlier in the week, Sean Payton, obviously very confident in his abilities to identify and develop a quarterback. Spencer Rattler, Zach, if let's just say all the King's horses, all the King's men, you can't get the guy that you initially have your heart set on in round 1. So you either, or maybe you want Bo Nix, but you don't want him at 12. So you trade back, stockpile a pick or two, and you trade back to say 25 or 26, something like that. And Bo Nix gets taken right before you're on the board. You go with an edge, you go with a corner, whatever. And if Spencer Rattler is then the next big priority, I would not hate that. He at least has some upside that you could get hopeful about, right? And maybe there's enough there, Zach, as a ball of clay for a quarterback guru like Sean Payton to work with.
Maybe it's me. I difference of opinion. That's why I said earlier, Big E, we're going to continue arguing and debating who the Broncos should take for the next month. I just think if you take Spencer Rattler in this top-heavy quarterback class, you're pretty much saying that you're going to be in the Derby again in 2025. I just think that, Chad, in a draft that has Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, McCarthy, Nix, and Penix, that you're going to settle for Spencer Rattler. I don't know. It wouldn't be my preference. I would definitely either take Nix at 10 or 12, if I'm absolutely sold on him, or I would move back, or I would take JJ at 12 if he falls. It'd be plan F or G to go after Spencer Rattler. But
no, that's fair, because even if you're a Rattler fan and you fully believe that he's got franchise potential, you also have to face the reality and what the odds say about the success rate of quarterbacks drafted beyond round 1.
Yeah.
So I don't care if he's a second-round pick. I don't care if he's a third-round pick, fourth-round pick like Dak. Those guys, the Russes in round 3, the Daks in round 4, the Breezes in round 2. Those are the exception guys that prove the rule that the vast, vast, vast majority of franchise quarterbacks in the league, Zach, procured through round 1. And never forget, there is no such thing as a free agent franchise quarterback either. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, those are the guys that prove to be the exception to the rule.
And something else that no one's talking about when it comes to where the Broncos should go here. Appreciate you, Ronk. As always, great show tonight, Chad and Zach on the MHH podcast. Thank you so much, Ronk. Is that you ideally, I'm not saying draft a quarterback for the sake of drafting a quarterback, but you want that 5th-year option. If you go Q in round 1, it ties you, cost control deal for an extra year. And that's how you want to assemble the roster in the post-Russell Wilson era. So again, if you're 100% sold that you think Bo Nix could be the guy and he's on the board at 12, just take him.
Yeah. Ronk saying the Arizona Cardinals are listening to trade offers for the 4th pick. If they're still, I guess they're tied to Kyler. If they're still on that train, Zach, then yeah, definitely put those signals out that we're open to moving back. You guys, like, load us up with some offers. Let's go. But again, that's got to be a tantalizing opportunity, Zach, or prospect for the Broncos. But I have a hard time seeing them outbid, multiple teams, but especially the Vikings, if it meant getting up there to guarantee you get either let's say a Jaden Daniels, Drake May, or JJ McCarthy.
I love how the Cardinals GM Monty Osifort put it. He goes, there's a big blinking neon sign that says we're open for business. He goes, I don't like it because it hurts my eyes, but I am listening to every offer that comes through. And I feel like if you're moving up to 4, you're not moving up for McCarthy. You'd be moving up for Drake May or Daniels if they do fall past New England. But crazier things have happened. You'd have to probably surrender a first rounder and PS2 to jump from 12 to 4. That's why it could be a spot for the Giants to move up, or maybe even the Vikings to move up in that spot.
There's always that one head coach, one or two head coach / GM combos that think they're smarter than everybody else. And even though they have a huge, whopping, glaring need at quarterback, and they're in the top 3, they shuck instead of jive. You know what I mean? Like they don't take the quarterback. Like you're going, no, Gerard Mayo, you got to you need a quarterback so badly, but he's going, no, I learned at the feet of Bill Belichick, I'm taking the best edge, right here, or I'm taking cornerback, something like that. I don't know exactly how it's going to shake out, but I would be surprised, Zach, if something like that doesn't happen, thus pushing a quarterback or two a little bit farther down the board, a little bit closer to within striking distance of the Broncos. But a lot of those things you're not going to know till draft day, and that's the agony of it all. Thank you again, Mike.
Yeah, and regardless, I mean, it could be a case where QBs go 1, 2, 3, and 4. The Vikings might move up and they might shock us all and go for McCarthy and just guarantee they get their guy. They got that extra first round pick for a reason, Chad, and they are going to use it. We just don't know to what spot and for whom they're going to use it on.
Most definitely. Okay, guys, we're about out of time. This is the last call for Zach. I was gone for this from String Guy. This is the last call for any questions or supers. String Guy says, anyone know if Sean Payton met with Bo Nix at the Combine? What do we know on that front, Zach?
I don't know that it was Sean Payton specifically. I feel like we would have talked about that, or there would have been pictures. I haven't seen anything on X. I know there were Broncos reps out there, Broncos scouts out there checking out Bo Nix and the Oregon prospects, but I don't know that Sean Payton was on hand.
So for what it's worth, according to reporting, this is Eric Dalala of the team site. So, anything and everything he reports on is going to definitely be acceptable to Sean Payton and George Payton, meaning, he's not spilling any beans that they don't want spilled. And he's kind of towing the what's in the interest of the Broncos. Let's just put it that way. He wrote on March 1st, Zach, he wrote, LSU's Jaden Daniels, North Carolina's Drake May, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix Jr. all spoke about their meetings in Indianapolis with Broncos brass. You don't think, guys, if a quarterback is being met with, Sean Payton's not in that room at the Combine? Of course. If the Broncos met with Bo Nix, yes, Sean Payton was in that room.
I feel so stupid because I don't know why I assumed it meant pro day, and Sean Payton was on hand for that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if they had a meeting, then Sean Payton was privy to that along with George Payton.
Good stuff. I love it. Yeah, state media, Scott says. And, God bless them. There's been some great writers and football thinkers and analysts that have been employed by the Broncos on the team website. I mean, Andrew Mason for years and years. Phil Milani, he just recently parted ways with the Broncos. Eric Dalala, got nothing bad to say about him. They do what they do, and we appreciate their contributions. Okay, last one we're going to take here from Danny, and then we're going to dip. Hey, and on Facebook, Danny Powers, what's up, bro? He says, hey, Zach and Chad, what do you think? Brock Bowers in the first round and Spencer Rattler in the third. Brock Bowers, of course, the Georgia tight end, viewed consensus tight end one in this class. What are your thoughts, Zach?
Well, you guys know how I feel about Rattler and passing up a QB in round one. Brock Bowers, amazing talent. No doubt he'll be a great pro. I just feel like, Chad, you can name about 10 things off the top of your head that are more important than tight end for the Broncos right now. I mean, not to count on Dulcich or Troutman, but you can find a tight end in the middle rounds that can be a developmental guy for Sean Payton. You have much bigger fish to fry than that. Even if you don't go quarterback, I mean, look at a tackle or an edge rusher, or maybe even a cornerback. Those are all pinnacle positions. Tight end is not. Maybe I'm the party pooper now, though.
No. I mean, again, if you were just going completely, if you were disregarding need completely, depending on how the board fell, he might be the best player available at Brock Bowers, that is, at pick 12. Maybe. But in what world, when you have gaping holes at quarterback, edge, these are significantly more crucial positions, by the way, relative to any team's Super Bowl destiny. Cornerback 2, offensive tackle depth. We'll see what happens with Bowles, but this is his contract here. In what world does anyone go, yeah, let's go ahead and take a tight end there? But tight ends, Zach, nevertheless, get drafted in the first round almost every year, right? So the team's doing the drafting of those players more often than not in every case, obviously, but more often than not, they have those cornerstone pieces locked down. They have a franchise quarterback. They have a left tackle. They have a shutdown or at least a good starting caliber corner and competent edge, etc. So, but again, I don't hate the idea. If all of your efforts prove futile and it just doesn't work out that you land one of the round one Qs, Zach, I don't hate, of all the other quarterbacks you could take a chance on late day 2, early day 3, I don't hate Spencer. He's probably my number one guy to take a flyer on. But like you said, you boiled it down, I think, quite succinctly when you said, Yeah, but you're basically telegraphing that we're going quarterback, 2025 draft, because that's what the odds dictate. Who knows? Maybe he's the next Russell Wilson and goes on to produce at a Pro Bowl level out of the gates as a day one starter, and you're a force to be reckoned with immediately with your third round pick. The odds just say that's not going to happen.
Listen, I have three things to say. I know it's our last question. We're getting out of here soon. But number one, if the Broncos were in a championship window and they needed that cherry on top, I'd have no problem with Bowers at all. In fact, I'd be pounding the table for it. Number two, how good of luck have the Broncos had with tight ends they've drafted in recent years? Dulcich, Jake Butt, Troy Fumagalli. I can keep going on and on and on. So I'm kind of wary about that as well. Number three, what were Sean Payton's tight ends in New Orleans? I can't recall him ever using maybe except for Jimmy Graham, but I never remember ever a true super. He was having the Adam Troutmans of the world there, Chad. That's why he brought him over in the first place. I don't think he needs a blue chipper to succeed. He wants someone reliable that can catch, that can block, and that can produce in his system. So Bowers would be a luxury, not a necessity.
The different periods of New Orleans, Sean Payton's time in New Orleans, were kind of marked by different groups of kind of the pass catchers. Early on, you had Jeremy Shockey, but it was like late stage Jeremy Shockey because, Sean Payton was part of the Giants staff that drafted Shockey. Then, you had the rise of the era of like Marcus Colston. Then eventually Jimmy Graham, the former basketball player, you had a good 3-4 years, whatever it was, of like elite Pro Bowl caliber production at the tight end position. But I would say, Zach, after Jimmy Graham, I'm 100% with you on it's like the Troutmans and the late stage Ben Watsons and stuff like that at tight end. You have a potential if you can keep this cat healthy. Jimmy Graham caliber tight end already on your roster. And I know that's a big if when we're talking about Greg Dulcich's health, Zach, but get him healthy. Start first though with your biggest problem, which is you don't have a freaking quarterback. You can't compete without a quarterback.
Well, I just looked it up. I thought he was a first-round pick. He wasn't. Jimmy Graham was a third-round pick. I saw DVA in the comments bring up Jared Cook, who was a tight end in New Orleans, a good tight end, but he was also a third-round pick. That's what I'm saying is you don't need a first-round tight end in the Sean Payton system. If the Broncos' window is open, I'd say go for it, but their window is as closed as it's been in quite a while.
Right. If Peyton Manning's your quarterback, if Drew Brees is your quarterback, exactly. You can afford to throw in that one weapon that might be able to take you over the top in the first round. But you could probably also have similar success if you're really good about your scouting with a guy drafted later on at that same position. And by the way, Jared Cook, also late stage Jared Cook in New Orleans. He spent 2 years there. The two of those years were 2019, 2020. 2021 was his last season as a pro, for what it's worth. So, all right, guys, great convo. Love you. We got a few messages, then we got a dip.
Another tremendous episode of the Mile High Huddle podcast. If you're not doing so, please follow us on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, at the MHH pod. You can follow the main account at Mile High Huddle, Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott, our producer, at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking each and every podcast, check out MHHmerch.com. Get you some. If you haven't, please drop us a like at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. You can find us on Insta at Mile_High_Huddle. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure you're leaving your Football Priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, y'all, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Scott, did we miss a Phil McLaughlin by chance? I'm just wondering. I thought I saw him earlier in the chat, and then it did one of those jumps on me. I'm just doing a very quick scroll up real fast because we don't want to leave Phil. I could have swore I saw him. Hang tight, guys. 1 second. There he is. This is it. Guys, Phil, appreciate you. Guys, at pick 12, we have Verse, Bowers, or Robinson available. Who are we taking? If it's not a quarterback, that's for me, it comes down to either of the edges. And there's an argument to be made for either. But I'm probably taking Robinson. Honestly, that's who I would be taking. Just, Cliff, rapid fire answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be good with him. I think Jared Verse is the guy. The Broncos, I know, have worked him out, met with him. They like what he brings. Very, workman-like. A better version of Zach Allen, I feel, is Jared Verse's NFL ceiling, and you can use that for sure on the Broncos defensive line.
All right, guys. A shout out, mile high salute, much love and respect to tonight's Super Chat superstars and supporters. We'll start with the Ronk, the Triple C, Troy, David Kilgore. Shout out to Big Earn. Want to just give a shout out to Broncos Country only Big Earn. But Keith, George Fox, the Duchess, of course. Dave from Georgia. So good to see you, bro. Jesse, Rock Chalk, Big E making a splash once again. Mike Edel, James Edwards. Much love and respect to all of you. Phil, thank you guys. Can't wait to do this on the next episode. Don't forget tomorrow, though, you got some Dove Valley Deep Divers Friday night. Don't miss it.
We will see you Sunday. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.